Hey everyone, I am delighted to be sat here today with two friends of mine. We have here Maria Herrera. Maria, welcome.
Thank you so much.
And Lucie.
Hey.
How are we doing?
I think we're doing great. I'm doing great. Anyways.
Excellent. We sat down today. We decided to have a little chat, and we were keen to sort of share our thoughts and insights based on product design, the UAE, and I suppose everything in between. Lucie, if you want to sort of briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, happy to. So my name is Lucie Bordelais. I'm responsible for Figma for what we called South EMEA, so south of Europe, as well as the Middle East and Africa. And I'm working at Figma, which is a company that you probably have heard of, but maybe I'll do a shorter or longer intro later on if you want.
Certainly. And Maria?
I'm Maria Herrera. I am the head of design at Revolut. I've been with the company for 2.5 years. Revolut, financial super app of Europe and hopefully one day the rest of the world. That's pretty much it.
Interesting. Look forward to hearing about those plans shortly. And myself, I'm Harry Sylvester. I work for Discovered MENA. We're a digital and tech recruitment company in the UAE, and I lead on all of our product and design roles that we work with for our clients here. So I guess first things first, productive year so far as we move into Q4. How are we feeling? Optimistic? Pessimistic?
So yesterday was September 30, so it was the last day of Q3, and we were very optimistic. We had a good Q3. So far this year, Figma has had a very good year in our region. Lots of growth, but also lots of activities, tons of customers doing cool stuff with our product, which we love. We love to see how the customer experience for our customers, but also for their end clients, are really improving. It's a good year.
Excellent.
I would say for us as well, very positive, very exciting time. I think right at the end of the year is where we start thinking long term and what are the next years are going to look like. So thinking about more of that long term strategy and vision for the company, which is very excited. At the same time, can be a little exhausting. So everyone's like just gathering up the energy for the last push of the year, I guess. But yeah. Good, exciting stuff ahead, I would say.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think it's been a pretty good year overall for the region. I think as someone that sort of recruits on behalf of various different organizations here, there's been a lot of investment happening in the UAE. Also, a lot going on in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia right now, which is, attracting a lot of investment and certainly a lot of talent as well, which is, sort of great to be part of that ecosystem. I think, there's definitely an air of optimism about this region right now, and I suppose it's probably why you both might be here in the region. You obviously moved out here just under 1.5 years ago. Lucie, it's your first time in Dubai.
It is.
So it'd be great to get your initial reaction and your thoughts on that. But yeah, I think overall there is definitely a feeling of, significant optimism in the air right now, considering sort of global economies that are perhaps not quite feeling the same. So yeah, I certainly feel sort of fortunate to be in this situation and in this region as we sort of witness that. So one day in Dubai, 2 days, 24 hours in Dubai.
36.
36. Okay, sure. Tell us, what do you think? Thoughts?
So the one thing that I'm really happy about, or that I really love to witness, is how cosmopolitan everything is. So we had a dinner last night with a bunch of our customers. And I think in my whole life, I've never seen such a diverse group from nationalities and center of interests, even though it was a bunch of head of designs. It just, the industries they represented, the point of views they came with. And as someone who's really think about diversity for my teams, for example, that was really it's more than a pleasant surprise. I kind of expected it, but not to that level. And I loved it.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's one of the things I love about this region is the natural diversity that we have in population. I think we're looking at around 85% of the population in Dubai are expats, which I think is pretty crazy when you compare it to any other sort of global regions. So yeah, it's certainly interesting, and I think that also presents challenges in itself. I know speaking to some design leaders, I'm constantly speaking to design leaders, and team management, people management, I suppose, is a challenge when there's so many people coming from different backgrounds, different educations, different upbringings and childhoods, and trying to find ways to manage that sort of diverse nature of personalities can be pretty tricky. I know that you've been building your team here pretty slowly, but pretty quickly too, right? Have you sort of encountered any interesting challenges with regards to management, given the sort of region itself?
I would say yes, but not particularly to the region. So like it's weird because I joined Revolut 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, and that was the first sort of happy surprise about Revolut, that like it's so diverse. Like my team back then like had like 40 nationalities. I haven't counted them. Like it's everyone is from everywhere. So I kind of like then moved to a country where it's just like a larger version of this and everyone's from everywhere as well. But definitely I can relate on the issue, because I think it's just you find very particular different styles of working, communication, and you need to start to find either the way to bridge those gaps, and like me as a head of function kind of like be the connection on helping people from different nationalities really like just be able to relate a little bit better, communicate better, adapt to different styles, or you need to start piecing the teams with combinations that you sort of see work.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a science of understanding just the background of people. Like you see like some nationalities be extremely structured, so they expect people to be very, very structured and very organized. In other cultures, you see people being a little bit more all over the place, which all of them have their advantages, right? Like in any business, sometimes you need a little bit more of the structure, sometimes you need a little bit of more of the creative, chaotic nature. So it's just kind of like piecing people where they can thrive and be set for success the best with the people that they can also rise with.
Yeah, really interesting. And just on that point as well regarding leadership and management, do you find that, or have you found in your experience that it's been very much trial and error? Do you of have any books or any resources that you look back on and you feel like really helped you in that journey to become sort of a manager?
No, to be honest, books or references, not 100%. I think a lot of it has been having great mentors.
Yeah.
So, and even like currently, like people ask me like, where can I learn how to be a manager? It's very hard for me to read how to be a manager, because there's just so many different leadership styles, different scenarios you encounter, that it's kind of with experience, and hopefully you have people around you that have lived through similar things and can guide you and point you in the right direction. I had an amazing mentor in my last company, Juan Guerra. He was the CEO of Rappi. Now he works at Revolut, funny enough, too, in Mexico. But like for me, like he was very much like an example of how he led with a lot of kindness and bringing people together, at the same time being very firm and sort of like no nonsense allowed in the team. So like, I don't know, he managed very well that balance of being friendly while getting things done and having the team very focused. So yeah, it's an art.
Yeah,
it takes
a
time.
little bit of trial and error, but yeah, I think you learn from those people that you work with, right? And yeah, if you're fortunate enough to work with some good mentors, then it certainly helps when you move into those leadership positions. One of the things that I'm certainly interested to pick your brains about is, obviously the UAE and Dubai is still a fairly fresh market in terms of blank canvas for Figma. That's obviously why you're sort of out here right now learning a lot more about the region. From what you've done already in terms of your research and conversations you've had with businesses out here, what do you find what have you found has been sort of any key differences so far with how perhaps businesses are utilizing the platform, or what businesses are asking for, what design leaders are asking for?
Yeah, I think so. In a way, it's very similar to other markets that I've kind of opened before. I don't like this word opening because a lot of people are using Figma in the UAE, so it doesn't really make sense. But we are very lucky that we are product-led growth, which means it's the product that gets the adoption. It's not salespeople. And so what you see in the UAE is that we already have a lot of people who are customers of Figma, because the product, honestly, is very, very strong. But the way they embraced it and the way they use it is also, done through trial and error. And there are people who come from all over the world, so who can bring their experience of Figma. But we have not done anything actively to make sure that, best practices of the ways to use the tool are completely understood. So where I say it's exactly the same as a lot of markets is that, first of all, it's product-led. And then when we come in, my idea is really to go with community. And so when we're here, we're meeting with customers, which is important. We're also meeting with the ecosystem in general, because we're a small team at Figma, and the reality is we sell a software. But a software is an enabler. And what you do with your teams, yes, you use a software, but you build a culture, you build processes, you build ways to work together around the software. And that's what we want to make sure is working for our customers, but we can't do it for them. And so what we try to do is say, okay, are there, either consulting firms that can show best practices? Are there customers that are doing it in a way that's very mature and kind of can show the way? We have customers in the UAE who are extremely advanced, who are just as advanced as our most mature customers in Europe or in the US. But that's because they almost found their own way or brought amazing talents from abroad, which is the great chance of the UAE, obviously, is to have all of this talent. So I think our job here is to make sure that we highlight the people who know, the people who are doing it best, so that other people that kind of stumbled upon Figma or kind of found it but don't quite know how to use it, make the most of it. Because at the end of the day, if you have a great software but you can only use like 20% of the capabilities, that's just too bad for everyone, really. So yeah, that's kind of how we want to look at it. And again, for us, building community, making connections here is the number one reason why we're here.
Yeah, interesting. So I will hold my hands up. I've never, ever once used Figma. Now, I'm obviously not a designer, but I do recruit for designers, and that's probably something I should change.
Okay, so start with slides.
Yeah, okay.
Figma slides.
Okay.
It's like slides that you use. Okay, let me ask another question. Do you ever do slides for your customers? Presentations.
Build a deck? Yeah, I can build a deck. Just
okay.
About, not quite McKinsey standard, but...
Build a deck in Figma. Go on Figma free.
Yeah. Because,
again, our starting plan is free for everyone because that's one of our goals. Design should be accessible to all. Even you, Harry. So this is what you do. You put your email address on the Figma website and you go to slides and you try it out. So and then you show me the deck next time.
Next time I build a deck for a client, then I'm gonna do it on Figma and I'm gonna send it to you for your
review and approval.
And you can let me know about any amends that you think I should potentially make. And if I sign that client, I'll give you a little backhander.
Again, design should be accessible to all. So whatever you do will be great. Yeah. And then maybe we can give you a couple of tricks.
Sure. Obviously, as an avid Figma user, we already spoke earlier about some use cases, but tell me what do you think of Figma? You must have used many design tools throughout your career. Yeah. Sketch, Envision was pretty big.
I haven't heard of these. I don't know what you're talking about.
These are cuss words.
The OGs we started in Photoshop and
Photoshop, Flash.
Adobe. Flash was more fun than. Yeah. But yeah.
So
sure.
As obviously tech has advanced and innovated, and the sort of requirement for designers has changed a lot. What do you think about using Figma now? Is it your best friend? Is it your worst enemy? Is it a little bit of both at times?
So it's a little bit of both at times, I would say. Like, we definitely love Figma, and we are a very Figma-oriented company at Revolut. Like, maybe too much, and I think that's the problem, that sometimes we run so even some stakeholders think some things can be done in Figma that we're like, no, this is like, it's like Figma should be the company source of truth of like what's in production. And I'm like, wait.
Great idea.
Yes, but this is not connected to any source of to be able to match things. So we're trying to figure out even internally, how do we use Figma to connect it to a different internal system and match things there. So kind of creating not plugins necessarily for Figma, but integrating Figma into our systems to be able to potentially do more with it. So I think that's kind of it's so great that people start idealizing all these features that Figma can do, that they have done a great job at making more of this stuff available, but not there yet. But at the same time, designers, definitely, in a company like Revolut, you have so many departments, so many we're already at 80 something designers in the company, or 90, I don't know, growing every day. So you really need a tool where people can come together, collaborate, work in one space, and it's kind of a common language. I think that's the important part. Design has become a common language within the company, with engineers, with designers obviously, and product owners, even ops managers. They all speak this language of design, and sort of we speak it through Figma a lot of this time. So yeah, it's definitely part of our everyday, rewarding and painful at the same time sometimes.
Yeah. So what I would say is, what you're describing, I think, is very common of what we would call mature companies, which is, okay, I have this tool, but the reality is I have a complex ecosystem, and design in and of itself is not enough. Design needs to go to production. If I can have the best design system in the world, if it's not being adopted by my devs, what's the ROI of this design system? Which is always a question we hear so much about. And so how do you connect what's in Figma which should be the design, but what's actually being developed is a big question that we have. And we have the beginning of an answer with dev mode, which is kind of the view of the developer on Figma, Code Connect, which is the idea of really connecting the design system in the design world and the components in the dev world and making sure they're more in sync. And to your point, I think we can go so much further. I think this really, and for us, that's where we're investing a lot of our resources and a lot of our time, because we do realize that designers and devs, we're talking about cosmopolitan and different cultures, talk about different cultures. Like to get those two cultures to get along and build and work and build together is it's a great challenge.
Yeah, interesting, sure. And on the subject of, Figma itself, I know that, yesterday evening you sort of spoke a little bit about what might be coming in the future. I don't know how much you can share today with regards to, any new new features, new enhancements, or, particularly perhaps what AI is looking like for Figma right now. Is there anything at all that you can share on sort of new developments?
Not really. What I can say is that, the two places where we are spending a lot of time thinking about is, yes, dev and design working together, and AI. And in fact, how can AI help dev and design work together? So again, we're talking about different systems. Can these systems communicate? How can we integrate with the bigger ecosystem, potentially using AI? So these are the two things we're thinking about. And so potentially the third thing we're thinking about is AI for the design to dev connection. So very close to you.
And this is exactly how we're manually sort of doing it. Like
exactly.
It's like, let's run a script through the actual app, get those screens, and then you have Figma, and then hopefully something can match to make sure that it's 100% exactly the same. Like it
so
doesn't exist yet, but that's the goal.
And that's really why we try to talk to our customers so much, and that's why I'm loving this, is because we're hearing this from a bunch of places. And again, our customers are super diverse. So we have high maturity people like you, and we have lower maturity people who also have other needs. But in terms of roadmap, we try to understand the next problem and try to solve it.
Yeah, really interesting. And just talking as well briefly about sort of Figma's head office and actual designers working at Figma.
Yeah.
I mean, is that sort of like as a product designer, is that kind of like the dream job? I mean, it must sort of certainly tick a box, maybe working for, the platform, the product that designers use every day.
Yeah, so one of the last releases we did, and it's actually still going through to our customers, is called UI3. So the new user interface for Figma. And so our designers were sharing, it's very meta to be designing for the design platform that designers use to design products. So is it the dream job? I don't know, because you have to be pretty meta, I think.
Is it designed in Figma?
Yeah, and it's of course designed in Figma. Are you kidding me? Obviously. No, it's designed in Sketch. So I think there's something a bit meta about it, but it forces you to think about what you do every day. I think as a designer, it keeps you a little bit on edge. Our VP of design, Noah, is a really cool guy as well. So maybe we can get him here sometime.
Yeah. Interesting. And obviously you're flying out to Riyadh as well to do some more research and meet some more customers out there.
Yeah.
What are your sort of hopes for Riyadh? Obviously a much bigger sort of economy, potentially a bigger market, and there's certainly a lot more investment going into sort of the building talent up from the ground in Riyadh, which is really nice to see. What are your sort of hopes, plans for your trip to Riyadh?
I think again, it's trying to meet with people and understand what they're looking for, what they're doing. You're absolutely right in terms of growth. This is an economy and a country where we're seeing a lot of growth, but we have to understand what really people want and what they are looking for. So, as I told you when I arrived here, my goal is to understand what people have to say and go from there. I don't want to arrive with this is what I'm going to do, and they're like, but that's not what we're looking for. Very pretentious, really.
Sure. There's always a constant conversation, and every time I go to an event in the UAE, whether it be human-centered design, product tank, or any other sort of design and product focused events, there's this constant word of maturity that I hear every time I'm there. You probably heard it already.
Yeah, I said it 15 times since we started.
But it's like the UAE market for design is not very mature. We need to add to our maturity. I don't like it. I think it's...
Why don't you? What do you like about it? Actually, we had a conversation. No, you were asking me what is this maturity?
Exactly. I think that there's so many... look, by definition, the UAE market is not as mature because tech here hasn't been the infrastructure of tech in the UAE is still fairly new. Businesses that have been founded here are still, fairly in their infancy. There have been some huge success stories, tech unicorns, and businesses that are obviously now opening teams and building products from the UAE, but it's still in its sort of infancy, I'd suggest. So that means, of course, by definition, maturity won't be here if you compare it to other big global cities. But the conversation, all of these events is, the Dubai market isn't very mature, or the UAE isn't very design mature. Now, if you break that down, like, what does that, from your perspective, having lived here for a year and a half now, obviously within a business that's set up elsewhere but has moved here, what do you have to say about design maturity in the UAE?
So for me, I get this question a lot. And it's actually been super interesting because, as you know, we're hiring in the market. Every time we start hiring a new market, I do the first round of interviews of every single designer we hire. So to kind of like start like getting a grasp of like the companies, their maturity, etc. And it's been super interesting because you start, like, it's like the way design is part of the company itself, it's extremely different. So definitely there's more, I don't want to keep using mature, but like there's more mature companies that like design plays a bigger role, and there's some that are literally there's some using Sketch, like that's how back we go, or there's some that like they have like a couple of graphic designers sort of do, like, I don't know, like it's like you can grasp that the company doesn't value design. And for me, maturity comes with the value of design within an organization. And that's sort of how I define it. Is in the past, without digital products, people tend to go to whoever gives the best service or whoever has the best price. So the business part of things had a lot of weight. Now with digitalization, the experience carries every time a bigger weight, because you have multiple competitors offering something, and sometimes the experience is going to be the big differentiator if I go with A or go with B. And I think the companies that have realized this, how brand plays into things, how touching a button that has a haptic and makes you feel really nice, how all those things put together actually would make people make choices about what product to use. When the company sees that value and lets that drive with as much power as the business incentive, I think that's the maturity that we're seeing in other places abroad. So I obviously saw it like in a company like Revolut, where design is at the center, like just as much as, of course, we want to make money and we care about the business a lot, we care about what every single user is gonna feel going through a flow, what it means. We dedicate time and resources to investing on like creating delightful experiences because we want to, not because they're gonna move the needle and get us 1 million users more. Like, no, we want people to feel something when they use their app. We want people to get excited about discovering little things in the app and using like the different features that we release. So like that has proven, I think enough companies have validated that there is a big weight on design. And I think it's just some regions have not maybe have an example within the region or close enough to see how this really impacts business metrics. So it's kind of just like a more, I don't want to say like maybe old-fashioned way of thinking of like business, and then just not being exposed as much to the design culture and how we can really potentialize a business.
Yeah. So
I think it's just that. And with companies, companies like Revolut coming in, or like I see like a lot of great talent coming in, like in Karim, in other tech companies here. Like as more people come in and start bringing this culture and bringing these values and this way of working, I think hopefully more people start seeing the value of design and product, and it just matures.
Yeah, no, I think the way that you described it there would be how I would love to describe it to everyone that asks me that question. But yeah, it's a tricky one, and I think it's sort of a large part of the maturity in this region is kind of dependent on where you've worked and what experiences you've had of design and product and working for certain businesses, certain people. Design leadership as well is often a hot topic in this region particularly. There really aren't too many sort of pure, what I would call pure heads of design out here in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, and also in Riyadh. That's, something that I think should change, but I don't have the answer necessarily to say why it should change or how it can change, and what the sort of light switch moment is for certain businesses to actually, promote someone into a head of design role or actually announce a new role within the business. Why do you think that for some people, for some businesses, for some leaders, a head of design role isn't necessarily important to them?
I think at some point, like I think businesses think design is just part of the chain of production. And then for them, it's very easy to be like, okay, we have a business, these are the products we want to have, and we just need someone to paint a little drawing that will get this to customers. So they're not really, again, because they haven't seen this importance of design end to end, they don't think they need someone at the head that's actually thinking of that long-term strategy or the whole picture of how this creates an end-to-end experience for a customer. So if you don't think you need that, then you don't need a head of design. You just need people to paint the little things to get yourself out there, right? Everything will be disconnected. People will not probably enjoy the things, like, because a lot of the things I see also is like they have like product owners working with a designer completely siloed from each other, again, because there's not a leadership or like a head of design kind of connecting the dots. So they end up with very broken experiences. Like you see some of apps that like you go into different sections of the app, it looks like it was designed from completely different companies and sort of pieced together. So
yeah, interesting. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I would say to the example of Revolut, I think one of the places where you didn't necessarily see a lot of maturity not so long ago was banks in general. Banks have been shaken a little bit by newcomers, and I think they're really thinking about it. Some of the most mature people we see in the region are actually banks, which you wouldn't necessarily think as design-centric. What I also think is interesting is Dubai does have ambitions to be a smart city, for example. I learned, because I've been here 24 hours, but I learned a few things, that in Dubai you can renew your license, your driving license, by going to a kiosk and pushing stuff, and it will like literally give you a new license. In terms of experience, it's incredible to renew a license in France. I don't even want to know how to do it. So I think, yes, there is businesses that are shaking each other and are maturing as an industry, but then there's real, policies and politics who want things to be better. And I think there is, so to your point earlier, I think there is also not an issue, I wouldn't say, but I heard in many places, we don't have head of designs. We also don't have junior designers, because here we don't hire junior designers. We can afford to have directly senior designers, which means that people who come out of school here don't necessarily find a job. And yet that's a real policy. That's a real policy from the UAE to say, actually, we want people to come out of university and go into careers and have a chance, through the meritization. And so for us, our third biggest user in the UAE is schools. It's people in colleges, it's people in universities. And so there's another way to increase and have more head of designs is also to have younger people join and have a point of view and push how important it is to have, those experiences. Because you're right, at some point, those experiences in brick and mortar are very disconnected. The young people, they just will not want them. Will not touch them. And they'll go to, other vendors. And that's just a reality.
Yeah, I know it is interesting, and I obviously see that from my side as well as a headhunter in terms of no junior positions being advertised really by many businesses. It's a shame because there are a lot of people that do come here for school, that do come here for very, very good education as well, and they want to build their life and career in the UAE. And unfortunately, investment at junior level, at intern level, is fewer and far between. I think that is something that is changing a little bit recently. Having lived here for 3 years now, I don't remember seeing a junior position ever advertised in my first year, but slowly but surely I'm starting to see some lower level and junior intern positions advertised, which is good. I also had a really interesting conversation with someone on LinkedIn who was a product leader working for a big delivery tech platform in Saudi. And they posted on LinkedIn that they would rather hire a commercially savvy designer than a designer with average Figma skills. Now,
because Figma is so easy to learn.
Perhaps. You told me that I could learn slides, so yeah, maybe it is. I sort of,
what does it mean, commercially savvy? My question would be, what
exactly.
do you mean?
You mean
customer centric? Because if commercially savvy means customer centric, wants to understand the customer, that's design centric, because design centric is actually customer centric. It's one thing people don't realize.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think there's a lot of people and a lot of heads of design now these days that not necessarily fail, but they struggle to push design through because of their lack of commercial skills or their lack of business savvy skills. So that is something that I think is still an ongoing conversation. I think what their point was when they were making this statement was certain designers don't understand the consequences or the effects that it has on business, or what the business needs are, and how then design can, support that. So I think it's not necessarily about customer centricity. It's more about understanding internally the business needs, requirements, objectives. What would you say about that statement? You would rather hire a commercially savvy designer versus a designer with average Figma skills?
I don't agree with commercially savvy. Like that's the part that, like, for me, it's like
business savvy.
For me, like the way I see it is like I always say I hire mindset over skills.
Yeah.
Because skills can be improved, mindset cannot. And the mindset I look for people that, yes, will think of the business, but like it's just more than the business. We'll think 360. People that are thinking, like, are really good product thinkers and can understand what problem am I solving, why is it important, should I challenge this? Like, I've had amazing, super talented, like beautiful. We do a home task at Revolut, and like I've received some home tasks that like I'm like, wow, like amazing design, beautiful design. They send me websites. It's crazy what these guys build. But then the problem is that the moment I challenge them on anything, they're like, oh yeah, what you said. I'm like, no, like this doesn't work. And I've hired some of these people in the past and sort of like learned from experience that like the moment they get in Revolut, all this creativity, all these amazing skills is useless if they cannot go deeper into thinking, what am I doing this for, and just get the full picture of the, like as you said, of the impact of their work. So I think it's a balance. I think some teams benefit sometimes from having more of this creative profile, and some teams require more product thinkers. But something that I find super interesting, actually, the head of product for Figma in Config was talking about this, that the lines of product and design in mature companies get very blurred, like start to get really blurred. I have designers talking to legal, talking to compliance, reading the regulation to see how they can improve the experience. Like, it just goes way beyond Figma and like technical, like the craft. It's really just having common sense, having logic, having product skills, and like being able to go all the way to make amazing experiences, because that's their goal. They want to create a beautiful design, and a beautiful design with a bad context, with not a real problem behind it, is useless.
Oh, really interesting. Hiring in the UAE, I know that's something that's been fairly recent for you, building the team here. How have you found that? I know that you've not necessarily needed any external support yet, but I am. My door's always open. Generally speaking, how have you found, sort of hiring? Because from what I understand, you've been looking at people that have already been based in this region already, rather than relocating anyone here. Or is it a little bit of both? Okay, sure. And have you picked up yet anyone from Dubai that's worked for a Dubai-based entity?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you find sort of hiring? Did you find it any different to previous roles or regions that you've hired in before?
No, I would say the only thing that it's been a challenge, as I said, like you have a lot of, so it's funny because I kind of lived through this in Mexico a while ago, and now I'm kind of seeing it here. Like there's just like some places where like the actual profession of like product designer, it's not a thing. It's not offered in university. So you have a lot of graphic designers, which is like what they go on uni, transitioning into, they want to become product designers. But this transition is not, it's painful, because like a product designer and all these product thinking skills like are very unlikely you'll learn any graphic designer. So I say like sometimes it's hard to find the people that are fully there when it comes to these two areas being developed. So you have to interview a lot to kind of get to the right profile sometimes. Ultimately, I think I found amazing talent here, like amazing. Like it's like any region you'll find like good candidates, bad candidates.
Yeah.
But I think it took us just a little bit more to figure out like strategically where to look, because it's not as obvious maybe as in other countries that you have lots of tech companies that you can start with a list of 10. Here you can start with a lower list, and then you find these big corporations that you might think like, oh, there's no way they have like a solid design team, like they look like they're super old. And then you go and you're like pleasantly surprised, like, oh wow, actually this huge corporation, like you would think super old fashioned, owns these little apps for their products that are actually really well designed. And we found really great people coming from that. Ultimately, yeah, like a little bit of everything, but a great experience. We did a hiring event recently. We hired 6 people on the day.
Yeah, I really like that. That was cool. I attended, and it was.
Wait, how does it work? I want to know more about this. You hire 6 people in one day?
Yes.
Because we're high growth, so I'm interested.
So basically, this was a bit of my, like, it was taking too long, and I don't do well with that. So what we did is our home task, which is our biggest sort of blocker sometimes for designers to complete. Yep. We put it out there. We said, like, we're going to Dubai. We're bringing our best designers. It's your chance to get in the team. You have to complete the home task by this date, and then you get a chance to come and interview with us directly. So that's what we did. So we put this out there. We got a fantastic response of people. I think the deadline of like, this is like your one chance. It is not the one chance, but like making it like time constraints. A lot of people came back with the home task completed, and then I brought the top leads of the company to Dubai, and we went through the whole process with the rest of the candidates. So like everyone went through. There's 2 more rounds after the home task. So like everyone did the 2 rounds with the lead designers and myself, and we spent the whole Saturday. It was actually really fun, and yeah, at the end of the day, we had 6 people that are joining.
You did all of that in person, right?
Yeah.
I can imagine it being like sort of like a table like this and your big red buzzer in front of you.
No. It was individual meetings scattered. No.
It has to be a nice experience.
No, like gladiator. No,
you're saying a lot about your culture when you do that.
No. It was like they were all, like every designer had a chance to talk to 2 people to go through the 2 stages of the interview process. Final interview with me, like the ones that pass. But yeah, it was like it was in a big venue, so everyone had like its own little spaces.
Yeah, it's really cool. I really like that. And you know, I think there's a lot of not very good hiring processes in this region. You probably both won't be aware, but there's so many businesses that really struggle to hire, but partly due to their own faults, that they have very long-winded, disjointed interview processes where often they don't really know perhaps what they're looking for. They set design challenges that are almost based on what their product roadmap is, and then they take that work and don't provide feedback, but you know, utilize it in 1 or 2 ways, and it's not very ethical. And you know, I think that there's certainly a lot more that businesses can do to raise the bar for sort of giving back to the industry and conducting fair interview processes. Going back to Figma and, you know, understanding a little bit more about, I suppose, potential AI and potential new sort of features, and also your perspective on what AI sort of has to say about design or what it could do for design. What are your, without sort of giving away any secrets and sort of opening the cat's bag as such, what do you think personally AI can do for design, and how do you see AI affecting design?
Yeah, so I think the way we think about AI for us is quite simple. We think it's going to lower the floor so that more and more people can actually get into the design process, and that you can involve people to be part of the design process, just because it's going to be easier to just do a prompt and have stuff come out. It's also going to increase the ceiling of what we can actually produce in a given amount of time, and how quickly professional designers, very trained designers, can do with the tool. Because at the end of the day, you know, we have extremely well-versed people in Figma that can do a lot of stuff. If tomorrow the mundane things are completely moved away from their table, they can go further, be more creative, think about things differently. Because to your point, I think great product designers are just thinkers. And yes, they are in Figma, but Figma is the result of all the things they thought about and what they want to bring to the world. So for us, AI is these 2 things. But we don't think that we're going to replace the craft of designers, because it is a craft that goes well beyond designing screens. The screens is the result of a mind. It's not the result of, you know, I'm drawing a sketch, to your point. If we were in a world where literally it's, you know, put something pretty on this, maybe AI could put something pretty on what a product person tells them to do. maybe. But we don't think that's what design is at all. We do not think that design is putting something pretty on it. And from that point of view, AI is not going to replace the craft. And so for us, it's also about thinking about what is the craft of the designer, and to your point, where does it link with product, with devs, and those three different jobs are just, it's changing, it's perpetually changing. There used to be no designers. It used to be that developers would develop an app from scratch, or a website at that point, maybe not an app. But it's an entire craft in and of itself, because there is a reason to it. But then it's changing again, so who knows where we'll end up.
Optimistic, scared about AI? Not really have any thoughts?
I don't want to sound like a broken record. Every talk I go about AI, it's like the same speech of like, it's not going to replace us, it's just going to make us better. Yes, but I do think it will replace a lot of us, that like, or the ones that don't adapt. Like, and I think part of this part you said like is will remove the craft. I disagree, and I think it can easily destroy the craft of design if we don't reimagine what the craft is. And like this is kind of what I've been challenged, and maybe it sounds super like delulu here, but like like what is the craft of design? Like we think of craft and we think of art and we think of like the artsy hands-on part. So you might think that's like actually creating the buttons, selecting the colors, like this very visual part. But like for me, the real art is orchestrating what an experience is, which is way beyond just like the screens, as you said. And like, it's just that craft of design, like maybe becomes the craft of product making that incorporates a lot more than just the design, and who are the people that can envision and connect the dots through something greater than just like one flow. And then the AI and like all these tools, I think they'll come to make it happen in a way more efficient way. I'm very excited on what AI can do for consistency across the app, like all these problems that you have to do manually. How do design systems evolve once you have AI? Because once your design system is connected to AI, and like you can probably ask it, can you make sure everything's consistent across all screens, and they can flag if a pattern is broken. Like, I don't know, I think we can do a lot on optimizing the way we do things. I think we need to reimagine what the craft of product building is in general, because I do think a lot of this manual stuff that we do right now will eventually, like not short term, but eventually go away.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah, 100% to your point about what is product, what is design, what is developer. At the end, we're building an app. Like it's not it should not be three different categories and three different teams and don't even speak to each other. You're doing the same thing.
Yeah, so. Really interesting. And just sort of finally, I suppose, regarding the future of design, you know, one thing that I'll keep my sort of my answer here pretty regional specific, but one thing that I would love to see more in the region, or love to see an example of, is a design-led founder, a design-led business, homegrown from the UAE, really championing sort of design and design process, and you know, building something really successful that really advocates design, and I'm sure would, you know, naturally attract a lot of design interest as well. That's one thing that I would love to see in this region, and I haven't seen yet in sort of the 3 years of being here. In terms of, you know, what you expect or what you can anticipate ahead of the future for design, obviously design has had many different names over the years. Product design is sort of where we're sat at now. I've seen some recent full stack design roles being advertised online. What do you see in terms of the future of design? We've spoken about AI, but outside of that, you know, how can you see the role of a designer developing in the future?
I really think like good designers, especially the ones that are growing in these companies where these lines are getting blurred, can do anything. Like these guys, like I think this is, and I mention often this in interviews with candidates, like one of the things I enjoy the most about Revolut is seeing designers go from very craft oriented, like people, like when it comes to like their technical skills, into these powerhouses, like entrepreneurs, like this guy that's talking to legal, talking to like that guy can, and presenting to a CEO, because every designer at Revolut presents to a CEO on a weekly basis. Like they're learning presentation skills, stakeholder skills, how to collaborate with a completely different, like, I mean, if talking to engineers is hard, you can imagine talking to compliance. Like they become these sort of like 360 rock stars. Like I see them that I'm like, this guy, if he finds the right idea, he can go sell it to whoever he wants, and he knows what he has to do to set up that startup, you know? Yeah. So for me, that's part of like I would say maybe is the next evolution of the maturity that we talk about.
And what about designers that can code?
Yeah. I mean, of course it's a great skill, and I think I mean, you tell me more skills, but like it will eventually, I think I feel like it's a better skill to learn how to see the bigger picture than learn how to code and how to design. Like there's like, I don't know, it's definitely like a great skill. I'm not gonna say no.
Yeah, sure.
So it's interesting because is it how to code or understand
exactly the process,
framework, the framework in which the developer has to evolve, and what are the constraints of the developer? Because the coding itself, it's like a language.
Yeah.
But understanding where are the limits of what the developer can do is super interesting. So there's two ways you can do this. Another way to do it is just to bring a developer in the design process, which makes for super interesting conversations because you have those two skills that are talking from the beginning. And at the very beginning, when you even think about a product, he can tell you, yeah, we can do this, or we could even do it this way because technically it would be smarter, it would be faster, and maybe it's even better for the business. So I think mixing the two, you can either, you're right, have the full stack designer, or what we see a lot in France at the moment is a bunch of developer moving to the design world.
Yes.
And being like, yeah, actually, when they see it coming, they're like, this is really cool. Like, this is another way to think about it. So they move, or you can have people talk to each other and learn from each other, which I think is maybe the first step before every designer learns how to code and every developer gets excited about design, which is probably long term. It's like, how do you get them to talk together and be together and think about the products of tomorrow together?
Yeah,
I think that's exciting.
Really.
Sorry, just really quick. And to that point, like you have designers and developers. Not always. Like I agree. Like I've seen some amazing developers. Like they want to create like really cool transitions, animations. Like they're really pushing to make these like wow moments with code, which is really cool to see, and they can achieve some great stuff. But like at the end of the day, like I think the mindset of like developers and designers, not as a generalization, but like they enjoy different challenges. That's why we're in different areas. So I think it's taking the best out of like those two minds that sometimes are very different, and like whoever thrives is who can connect them to make something amazing rather than who can do both.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think we'll have to cut it there because we are on a time schedule, but I certainly enjoyed that conversation and wish we could carry on for a little bit longer. Perhaps we can revisit it in the future. But just wanted to say thank you to both of you for putting some time aside to have a chat today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting discussion, and we'll see what the future holds for design, but it's certainly a nice testament to have Figma in the region and doing a lot of research and mapping here, and obviously businesses like Revolut moving out here too. It speaks volumes, I think, about sort of the future state for what the UAE can offer for design, and I think a really interesting place to be right now as a designer too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Awesome.